Hi, this is Nicholas Bell with IONCINEMA, here to review Every Breath You Take, the third film directed by Vaughn Stein, which Vertical Entertainment will be world premiering April 2nd, 2021. This is the second pandemic release of Vaughn Stein's, whose Inheritance opened earlier in 2020. His first film was Terminal in 2018, starring Margot Robbie. This latest film is a throwback of sorts to that sweet spot of late 80s, early 90s adult contemporary thrillers where affluent white people, usually heterosexual couples, that are accosted by some menacing force often for very personal reasons. Casey Affleck headlines this latest film as a psychiatrist in upstate Washington, Dr. Philip Clark. He's married to Michelle Monaghan, who plays Grace, who's a realtor. They have a young son. He has a teenage daughter, Lucy, played by Eisley from a previous relationship. Their young son dies early on in a tragic car accident, which the details are kept a little obfuscated for a little bit throughout the film. It opens with this estranged couple. He has kind of taken on a radical new approach to a troubled patient, Daphne, played by Emily Ellen Lind, who's a wealthy young debutante type who has spent 14 months in a facility and just can't seem to break out of her depression, which runs rampant in her family, etc. He has decided to divulge everything about his own trauma to her, and through that her symptoms radically disappear. And he uses her as a case study to present at a local university, which there's a muffled horror that spreads across the room, as well as with his colleague superior, Vanessa, played by Veronica Ferres, who is also an executive producer of the title, who shows concerns about how maybe what he did with that client was perhaps more for him than for her. They're scheduled to have dinner at his home later that night with both couples when he gets a panicked phone call from Daphne on his way home from work. Her best friend has just been found dead. She says she's going to be okay. They have an appointment for the next morning, but later that night the cops show up at his house saying that Daphne has killed herself, and he is listed as her her emergency contact. So he goes to see her dead body lying on the asphalt of her home, and there he meets her brother, James Flagg, played by Sam Claflin. Shortly after that, Claflin had looked up the doctor's address online and shows up at the house with some items of Daphne's to give to him. He's invited inside by Grace to have dinner, and then that sets off a ripple effect of allowing James to have the opportunity to seduce both the mother and the daughter to varying degrees of success, and therefore try to dismantle Dr. Philip Clark's life, seemingly for his own nefarious reasons, which the film does ultimately let us know about, in a twist that is something of a letdown when it wasn't necessarily important to have that at all in the first place, because you know that there's something up with this character. Template-wise, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, of course, immediately comes to mind, but we know exactly why in that film Rebecca De Mornay wants to ruin Annabella Sciorra, for instance, and all of that kind of makes sense. None of that, there are so many dubious decisions made here in a film that really is about an ethical dilemma and about divulging too much to your patient and how that can unwind. It's the first produced screenplay of David Murray. It was originally going to be filmed back in 2012 as a project starring Harrison Ford and Zac Efron, apparently, and for whatever reasons it has sat shelved until now. It very much feels like it needs to be tweaked to kind of fit into how real life looks, such as some identity secrets that just wouldn't be possible based on the facilities that are breached to make this narrative work. Michelle Monaghan is kind of playing a milquetoast character that we've seen her play several times before, as is Casey Affleck. He's not really, as Philip Clark, he isn't really given anything to do, and Veronica Ferres is always interesting to watch on screen, but the dynamic she has with Affleck's character really calls for something more ambiguous than I think what we receive. Otherwise, everything, besides Claflin, who's usually quite well cast when he's playing a villain, if you happen to see The Nightingale by Jennifer Kent. But all of this kind of is more or less playing with extreme cliche and people not making decisions or existing in a world that seems like it's what we're living in today. Marlon Espino is the composer, Michael Merriman, the cinematographer, both who worked on Vaughn's last film, Inheritance. If we're comparing Vaughn's trajectory as a director, I think there are a lot of things about Every Breath You Take that seem to show a rise in abilities compared to Terminal and Inheritance. The title is kind of questionable because, of course, it calls into mind the Police song, but there's a repeated phrase throughout the script about the deepest hurt you ever felt, which just seems like it would have been a title that fits what's going on with this narrative, at least. Overall, I'd say Every Breath You Take is quite a big missed opportunity on many levels, and I would give it 1.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.